I'm ArtificialArtist. Hi, and welcome to my channel. I'm quite new to commenting my work and showing it. Yeah, I've had to take a 4-year break from, well, making content for my channels, and I'm just getting back into it, and I'm just kind of, trying to find my flow again. And yeah, it's been a very interesting half year now. It's pretty much almost to the date. 6 months when I started making assets for Planet Coaster, and it was a pretty rough start, I have to say. In the beginning, I had to take a lot of negative feedback on it, and I was pretty distraught actually, and quite demotivated, and I got pretty angry about that, because I spent a lot of time on testing and creating a certain quality, and I thought that was pretty unfair. But fair enough, people don't see how many hours you spend on it and how much work you put into it, and for me that was quite personal though. I felt very attacked. Then there were a few YouTube channels who tried to insinuate how there are certain creators that make assets that are way too good for the standard Planet Coaster quality, which is absolutely not true. You know what I would have liked to say right now, but we're on YouTube, so let's keep it nice. And yeah. So it's not the file size itself that brings the game's performance down. It's the LODs, and they do not show or the performance or how well a asset performs in game is not defined by the file size, but by the number of triangles that you have, for instance. And I personally think that Planet Coaster would benefit a lot from some sort of quality assurance for custom assets. I think in comparison to Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, this is a lot different than it was back then. Back then it was like more of an, let's say open source kind of modding attempt by a lot of talented people who program tools and who actually used to reverse engineer the engine. And if there was an effort like for a while to fix all the little kinks and all the bugs and everything that's there, I think this tool could be really future-proof, as well as with the other games in the Planet series, because this is the defining moment for that, and although personally I don't think that with Planet Zoo or any other future games that are coming in the Planet series, they're going to follow up on that same thing. At the same time, this can really aid the flexibility of the game, if it's done right. And if you look at all the content that has come out since the Thememaker's Toolkit came out, and all the talented artists that are doing stuff and making assets and taking their time, their free time to do this for free, people benefit a lot, and the game the creativity in game, the flexibility, it really benefits a lot from it. So I think it's worth kind of having an open debate about where this should go, and what the ups and downs of the Thememaker's toolkit are, because this might sound stupid, but this feels like a halfway attempt, to just, okay, we promised this for long, so let's finally put this out. But honestly, if we, the community and the devs just for a while made like a real effort to look into that, I think this Thememaker's Toolkit could be the start of something really interesting, something that hasn't been in the modding community, like in any other game compared to this. I remember back in the days of Rollercoaster Tycoon 3, I downloaded a lot of mods and used them in my parks, and some were really well done, and some didn't look so nice, but they were still pretty okay for the time being, and for what was possible with Rollercoaster Tycoon 3. But there were a few assets that really brought the performance down. I remember the scaffolding item, which I loved to use because I really liked it when I was building a park and the peeps were running around, and in between you had like a construction site, the new ride that's coming up, and I love doing that. So the problem was, whenever I did that, my game started to lag badly, because there was so much detail on that object. It brought the performance down by a lot, and that is the similar case with my coaster. Some assets aren't as performant as they should be, and however, the big difference is that in Rollercoaster Tycoon 3 there weren't any LEDs, so the performance depended on the triangle and polygon details that each asset or object or item, or however you want to call it, had. With the current system that the Cobra engine uses, it's much easier to make highly detailed objects, but to have them perform well at the same time. And the key really is the reduction of polygons and triangles. Another key, and that something that Rollercoaster Tycoon 3 never had, and it wasn't really there at the time, is normal mapping, and the normal mapping can save you a lot of performance. If you look at the pillar right now, you just see it's cylindrical. There are no bevels on the cylindrical surface. I'll add them a little later in the video. You will see that, but in game they are not there. It's just a normal map. However, I had to model the pillar as if it's in there to bake the normal map off of it. If I put the column, pillar, whatever you want to call it, if I would put it in there with the bevels, it would eat a lot more performance and be a lot higher. I also decided to, on this one, go with a lower resolution, so that's why the column only ends up with around 1.5 megabyte. if I used double the texture size, and I would need to use double the texture size, I can't just take a step in between. You know, it's a technical detail. Then it would, well, pretty much triple the file size, and would still not be bad, because it would go up to 4.5 around, or 5 megabyte at the most, and depending on how many maps you insert. What eats up a lot of space is the normal map, and the normal map is one of the maps that you can't compress to the extreme. Diffuse maps, roughness maps, anything else, you can compress down a lot. You can reduce their size. However, I noticed that when the items get converted, the Toolkit converter, it seems to take the maps and make its own kind of do its own kind of mapping on it. So it takes them and I think puts them into some kind of similar to a UDIM UV texture, and so all compression that you do is basically reversed. so let's maybe talk about this in another episode in detail. Let's actually talk about the model finally, or what's happening on screen. The problem is I use 3ds Max, and 3ds Max and the Thememaker's Toolkit, there are a couple of bugs that since December 10th or 11th, since there was an update, it does not import the animation properly anymore. So and that was before that when I made the column actually. So what you see there is actually the preparation for animating it. Even though you don't see any bones here, that would have been added later. But just to have the base for everything, and to just have it set up. Yeah. So it was supposed to have a mechanical mechanic base with cables and everything, a steel structure underneath, so it would have this real kind of look of what something in a ride would look like, whilst simulating a falling pillar, which I think would be would have been really nice to have in game actually. When you have one of these boat rides, through some dark tunnel, and then all the pillars are suddenly dropping right towards the boat, and they stop just right before you. Would have been a nice effect. Anyhow, I had to scrap it, and never got back to it so far, because it was really frustrating to try to get that, and I so far didn't want to spend my time testing and trying to find workarounds. So I just kept to static objects instead. And trust me, there are a lot of bugs on there as it is, with the hit check or the hitbox. For example, for instance, there's a couple of things, but anyhow, right now I'm reducing the bottom and top sections. You can see a lot of squares there, which would make up quite a few triangles. So the key is to reduce the the line structure, or to optimize it to have it use less triangles, and you should reduce them wherever you can. You know, any flat surface doesn't really need like thousands of triangles, because what for? You know, you're not showing, or you're not defining a shape. You know, and with low poly modeling, it's really important to you know, use your triangle budget where it's necessary, and to reduce it wherever you can. You know, and as you can see there, it already looks like a lot less than it was before. And so yeah, that's actually not you know, a quick thing to do. And if you're careless, you just save yourself the time and not do it. And that's also one reason I got like so annoyed with some of the comments I got, or the feedback, because I wouldn't need to take that time. You know, I could just you know, be a lot less careful with my triangle budget, and it still would work in game. But sadly, I like to have a certain quality with stuff that I deliver, and that's just my personal thing. And here I actually made a mistake, because this doesn't look too bad with if you know the pillow that I'm modeling, if you have it in game, or if you've seen it in the workshop, it has like twice the amount of bevels. That's the ones I'm doing right now, and I should have taken a copy, pulled it to the side to have like a variation, you know, or to make several variations of it. That's something I didn't think of in the time. And right now, here's what I meant by the example. So if I would have imported like that, it's a lot heavier on performance than how it is when you see it, or well, how the finished column is like. And so yeah, we are in the process of welding together some of the surfaces, like again reducing unnecessary triangles, and let's just call it polygons for now, because it really doesn't matter at this point whether it's n-gons, quads, or triangles. It only matters in the end. The Cobra engine can deal with all of them, but it counts the triangles themselves. So by system, it's best if you make assets, if you only use quads and triangles and try to stick to those. N-gons can be, well, they can be tricky. You know, they can they need a lot of calculation time, because the engine has to figure out you know, where to put it into triangles, because any quad surface or any quad polygon, you know, it can easily divide, you know, into two triangles, and that's a lot harder with n-gons. So that actually, if you have a lot of those, it does eat into performance, no matter how many you know, triangles it's comprised of in the end. It's a calculation effort that the program needs to do, or the engine, to display the object properly, you know. So yeah, I could have gotten away with how it looks right now. Actually, the smoothing groups make a lot of difference, and from a distance, it also looks very, well, pretty much the same as how it's final later. But you'll see what the actual difference is, and what difference that makes in quality. So it really makes sense to spend the additional hour or two on the asset to do that, you know, because indirectly makes a big difference. Or if you have like hundreds of workshop items, and I don't mean the blueprints, I mean Thememaker's Toolkit items in your inventory, if they're done with the performance in mind, then that will make a big difference on how laggy your parks are going to be, and everything else pretty much, loading times and all that. So you know, it is important that everyone who makes assets keeps in mind the performance. That's really important. And if that means that it takes you a day or two more than you already spend on your assets, then actually that is a good thing. And well, speaking for myself, I have to say, in the beginning I spent a lot of time on individual assets, like that haunted bust, for example, that took a long time to make. Because of the effect it uses, you can't just use normal maps. That wouldn't work. So that has to be a mesh. And I don't know, it took me 2-3 full days of work, like I don't even know, 14 hours a day, roughly, to get that model right. There's a lot of normal maps on the surface for the wood details, and the face itself is fully meshed, and I had to reduce it like extremely because you know, when you're close up, it needs to have a lot of detail. There was no way around it. I tried and I tested, but there's no way around. So and the further you zoom out, the well, more detail you can lose, but at the same time it can't well, how do you say, it can't jag or you know, change its shape in between when it switches the LOD. So that was actually the well, the most complicated part about it. And yeah. So I earlier said this being the high poly model. So coming back to this, in a bit you will see a video where this is actually named LOD0, but that's not true. The LOD1 or L1 is the actual LOD0. So this is the baker model. It's used to bake the normal map for all the other LODs. And so the LOD0 actually has 1,200 triangles. I just checked it. And when you zoom out 5 or 10 meters, then you know, it's almost half of that again. And but you can take a look yourself at the triangle count. So yeah, and then it goes down further, and the lowest LOD is comprised of 76 triangles, and that's roughly 8% of the triangle count of the LOD0. That's pretty extreme for even what the Thememaker's Toolkit guide tells you to do. So a 10% of the total triangle count of LOD0. That's what the LOD5 should have. Or yeah. So one thing I wanted to say is I stopped making complicated assets because of all the negative feedback I got, and because people don't really notice that. So why spend a week plus on a single item when you know, people don't even think of the work involved, you know. So at the moment I'm going or doing assets that take me maybe a day or half a day, and that's a lot still. But it's just there's just no point, because Well, actually, there is a point, but I just lack the motivation to do that, to be brutally honest. And well, maybe in the future that'll change again, but right now I'm just happy I can do stuff in the first place, because I wasn't able to do this for years. So here we have like a breakdown. Well, not a breakdown, but you can see the animation that was done. It's speeded up, but you can see it's a little jagged when it falls down and drops, and that's actually on purpose because I wanted to have the mechanical, jaggedness that a well, pneumatic structure has. Like any pneumatic animatronic will jag a little bit, and actually Disney was the first company to find a solution for that, and that's why their animatronics are so fluid. They built in counter mechanics, kinetic absorbers basically, that work that add the opposite force to what is applied, and therefore their movements are like really soft nowadays. There's a lot of more patents and inventions that went into the today's modern animatronics. I'm talking about animatronics that were made in the 60s and when Walt Disney was still alive. So yeah, here we are at the LOD stage right now. That's the video I was referring to earlier, or the clip. And so I'm going through all the different LOD levels, and you can see how much detail it loses over each instance. And I could have even reduced it further. Yeah, actually I could have reduced it much more, but right now I have a lot more experience with creating assets specific for Planet Coaster. It takes a while to get the hang of what the system is all about. So anyhow, thank you for watching, and I'm usually not someone who I hate call to action sentences, but it would be great if you left some feedback on how this series could be improved and what could be done differently. Maybe try to stay constructive, just to hear what you think. Maybe share it would be awesome. And I hope you enjoyed this, especially me talking for so long. I can't listen to myself talking for that long, but hey, it's YouTube. So yeah, we're gonna continue this series, and I want to improve on the quality and how it's done and everything, and maybe give a few more tips on the side. So I'm ArtificialArtist, and thanks for watching. See you next time.